Thank you for listening to the Chris in Retro podcast. Part 2 of Victory of a Congressman starts now.
So when you and I first met, obviously you have to be guarded with people in your role because people weaponize one word you say in public life. It's clear. That's one of the challenges of being in public life, one of the things you knew you were dealing with. You had mentioned that your father had passed, but you had also mentioned that there was some burden on you because now you knew you were around the age. At the time when we first met, you were just past the age, and you've outlived your father. And I know there was some of that there, and I at the time hadn't realized it was he had taken his own life until much later you'd shared that with me. That had in and of itself had to be, because I was thinking at first maybe it was a health choice he had, or you were worried about chronic illness and things like that, but actually technically you were. I mean, there's some mental health issues that cause us to become alcoholics. There's reasons why we take our life, obviously, for mental health issues. So I wonder if those events, and as you understood them and realizing that you don't have to be insulated, doesn't make you more of a man to insulate. It's not tough. There was more going on there than I realized.
Definitely a lot more going on. And I didn't even realize it. I remember, as I was going through the journey when I was 2, there was no comprehension in my mind that he took his own life. There was no, because it was all guarded. It was all hidden. It wasn't discussed. And then slowly over the years, some of my older brothers and sisters would share some comments. They would share some stories of those times. And then, then you start to piece it together. And then when you face that 48 mark yourself, obviously I'm thinking about that from a mortality perspective quite a bit. And then you add, oh my gosh, he took his own life at 48. You're absolutely right. That caused a lot of stress, a lot of that voice, that demon voice that can weigh in, really saying, well, if your dad did it, why don't you? Come on.
Of course.
And so there's always, as you deal with addiction, as you deal with mental health, and we all deal with it. There's not a person that I don't know who has not had a suicidal thought at some point in time.
Whether it becomes an obsession or not is really the difference.
Correct. And it's either that suicidal thought to try to medicate that voice, or grabbing that bottle, taking that vial, shooting that whatever.
Or you just don't want to deal with it. Like the thing I hear about a lot is actually you get to a point where you've created such a mess for yourself, you don't see any way out. So why bother?
Why bother?
Yeah.
Just buckle up and ride it out and have a great time, and it's going to end it quick.
Yeah, and for me, it was just like, all right, well, I don't really have the balls to kill myself, so I'm just grab a bottle.
Kill yourself a different way.
I don't know what else to say.
You're physically still alive, but you destroyed everything.
I'll just think about it a lot more.
Yeah.
But, I find it interesting, though, is that I think that I'm trying to figure out how to word this, because I've seen some of your testimony on things that you're very passionate about. And I think that some of that has to have come from these realizations of who you are now and what you know to be true about what could have been. And I'm probably putting words in your story the way it is. It just feels that way. And I think that for that section I described when we first entered this portion of the discussion, I think they've got to work through the fear of the disclosure. Because if you disclose it and you start treating whatever's going on with you, you're saving shame. You're saving all kinds of stuff, all kinds of problems. Let's say you never found out for any legal issues, or you're never caught by the police or anything else. Never. It's inevitable destruction. And the flip side of that is you're not just coming to the forefront with a mental health issue that you have to deal with. That's such a minuscule part of it, is to come clean. It's the victory and the life that you now have that you've never known. When you're in those roles, I've got 13 leadership awards with Johnson & Johnson, Becton Dickinson, some large corporations for work I've done. And I thought, and though in those environments, I was an alcoholic, and I thought that disclosing I was going to lose all that. I had nothing at that point in my life.
Chris, you're hitting on exactly the moments that we who have dealt with this can reflect upon, those moments where, okay, I'll take care of this problem by succeeding, by controlling everything. There was a time in my life before I came clean, so to speak, and confronted those demons and addressed them, where I would micromanage everything. I was, cranking, 24/7. And everything around me had to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, then we're going to do it again.
Sure.
And I could be a real pain in the ass, especially to staff and things like that. And on looking back on it, it was because I was trying to control it all. I was trying to succeed not by just letting it. You got to do your part, but letting it go. You know, in the program, letting go is part of that healing. And until you do that, you hold on, and that's when we're knuckling. That's when and to the people that are out there thinking, well, no, this is the way to live. That I just got to control it, and it's just knuckling through, and everything will be okay tomorrow. It's not sustainable. The human body, the human mind, and the human soul cannot sustain that.
No.
It will crack.
And you are not strong enough to be your own deity.
Amen.
And that's what we do, is we become deities of those around us. I mean, I struggle even today with controlling behavior, procrastination, and fear. Those things dance with each other like you wouldn't believe, and they squeeze. You said white knuckling. It's squeezing the life out of my life and those around me. And those are manifestations.
And that people, when they even when I would look at people who were going through recovery and things like that, recovery, the actual recovery is a great success. But recovery is much deeper than that. And the joy that comes from it is much better than that white-knuckling success award that you get, because you still got to fight it every day. But boy, when you embrace it, the freedom, the power that you get as a result of it, it brings such happiness and contentment that when you're fighting it, when you're trying to control it, you just never feel that. That's why whenever I would win a race, my wife's like, "Why can't you enjoy it?" Because I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't let it go.
Insatiable.
You just had to control it. This wasn't good enough. I have to do it again. You getting your award. I got the award. I got to get 6 awards. Then I'll be happy.
Did you ever
And you keep churning. And that's where people, in recovery can share their best story, in my opinion, is to give people that, you know what? You can still win those awards,
right?
But now you can enjoy them, and you can build off of them, and you can make a stronger family and foundation upon which you can take care of your next generation in a positive way.
Yeah, I feel like the thing I appreciate about your recovery is that the lessons you're learning are on the tip of your tongue all the time. It's not something that's guarded. It's just become who you are. And I think that's one of the challenges that we talked about, early on in recovery, is even finding a meeting that you were allowed to go to. You know what I mean? You can describe some of that, but that was tough to even get help.
Look, I'm in a public position, and as I'm going through this public position, and my alcoholism I was a binge alcoholic. I mean,
Which is why a lot of people don't think they're alcoholics, because they can take it or leave it. They think
they're party. You don't have to have it at 6 o'clock in the morning, and that's where a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're an alcoholic, so you must drink at 6 a.m. and must be drinking at 11." No, that's not what it was. It was, okay, we worked hard. We deserve the right to have a party. Yeah. And then once you crack the seal, then I was like, holy cow. What happened? And you wake up the next morning going, what did I do?
Absolutely.
And I'm a public official.
Yeah.
And so that scared the hell out of my family and me. There are many nights where it's like, Jesus, that was such stupidity. And then it becomes a perpetuating, man, you're an asshole. Man, you are a worthless
We get tunnel vision, like you wouldn't believe, drinking. We only see the world for what's right in front of us when we're alcoholics. And then at that point, when you come out of it, then like you're saying, the perpetuation. And if you've already got pre-existing mental health issues and obviously some heredity with that.
And be honest. I mean, when I was binge drinking, it was like fun.
Yeah.
That first moment when you have the first drink and everybody's having a great time and you're out dancing and acting like a fool. Yeah, that's great. But play, as one of my mentors and counselors taught me, play the tape all the way through, because you know how it ends.
Right.
And there's not a person out there who hasn't had that experience, and have seen this. They go out with friends, great time, and then next thing you know, you're yelling, screaming, arguing, or you're crying out of control, emotional, and you ruin the rest of the evening.
Absolutely.
And it went from, and it reminds me of, you ever watch Simpsons?
Yeah. Yeah.
Simpsons, like Homer goes in and he's like at the party, he's like, I'm the life of the party. And he is in the beginning, but then like 2 hours in, he's like, and he's a stumbling drunk and he's an idiot.
People don't want to deal with it.
Like, what the heck is this? And then he's got to be babysat.
Yep.
That's part of this journey of alcoholism that people know, but they don't really know.
Yeah, for sure. I had a friend of mine, still a friend today, obviously, but we were training partners, and we would we were bouncers at a country bar down in Letchworth area.
Okay.
Big country bar. They'd have big dance nights and bands and everything else, but we knew every single time the two guys that came in buddies together were going to be the two rolling around the parking lot before the night was over. It was all alcohol. They loved each other coming in, but it took
And they'd love each other the next day.
Absolutely.
But they were medicating in the moment.
And they don't remember who they were fighting over.
They don't remember
or what
was causing it. Yeah.
So-
and that was part of my problem you couldn't reach out. You couldn't reach out because I still had the stigma problem that I was dealing with. Couldn't really talk to anyone. There wasn't anybody to reach out to because of this stigma that is out there. And it wasn't until I finally got to that point 5 years ago that I said, this has to end. And I was in a hotel room in Chicago at an event, and I'm like, what am I doing? And I got a whole chapter of my life left. And I just kind of dropped to my knees, surrendered, turned my life over to my higher power, and I just said, I'm ready to put this demon into the place it needs to be and heal. Open up to the truth and heal.
It never goes away until you get to that point, I don't believe. I mean, maybe others have had better experiences than that, and I don't think you have that, this massive God moment, but there at least has to be that place where you're at least willing to relinquish the things you can't control.
Correct. It's recognizing, even if it's not, to me it was spiritual, and it is a very important part of it, but to other people I've heard it described, it's just a recognition that you're a human being. As you said, you're not a deity. You're not. Humans are wired flawed.
Right.
There's no perfect human being.
Right.
I've never met one. And once you accept that, that you are imperfect, then you can start healing and move forward and become even a more better person than you ever have been before.
Right. This is kind of a sidebar, but really the audience that's in the loftier positions in life, if you're not listening to yourself, if your arrogance has blinded you to what you're actually doing, take seriously the feedback of those you love. If you have a wife that's becoming massively discontented with your behavior, or kids that are increasingly becoming distant, or all of a sudden you have a different circle of friends than you once had, these are all indicators, to be honest with yourself, that something isn't okay. And if it's the common denominator is you, at least explore that maybe drinking is a problem.
It's like pointing the finger,
Yeah.
When you point the finger at somebody else, it's someone else's problem. You got three coming back at you.
Right.
And what you just said, Chris, was so wise. And to the audience here, or high-performing individuals, they know the truth. I knew the truth.
Yep.
You knew the truth.
But we think we can fight beyond it.
And we think we can, yes. And we'll figure it out tonight and tomorrow, but I'm going to have one more night out. But that's your strength. You have a skill set that is stronger than most people who aren't as successful as you.
Right.
And rely upon that. Recognize it. Don't be afraid of it. I was afraid of it because it's tough. It is tough to face these wounds, to face these traumas, to heal. Mine was just passing my father with his suicide is but one of the traumas. We have multiple traumas through our life. And just recognizing that, you have that, and listening to your internal voice that's part of the healing.
Yeah. My dad, I love my father. He's one of my two favorite people in the whole world that I respect most, for sure. And he's given me advice that's just really young. I was having some problems with people, and he's like, the thing you like the most about them is probably the thing you'll hate the most. Well, you just made a comment. We were talking earlier about somebody says you can't, and that was a driver for you. Like you pursued excellence because of it. But we also, when we're in active addiction or have other mental health issues in leadership roles, somebody says we can't. Well, we're like, of course I can. I've done all these things. I pull out my awards. I did all these things. Well, you also got many more charges than you had awards. So at what point is this thing going to balance?
And even if you don't get the charges,
right?
They're still. You have the award,
but they were important.
No. Don't get me wrong. They're part of the journey. They're part of the lesson.
Yeah.
But there are people that I know who, for the grace of God, they were not, arrested or pulled over.
Yeah.
But they still had those
tick marks
in their mind, in their own journey, and they knew it.
Yeah, for sure.
They knew it. If they're living in denial.
Yeah. So, I feel like Well, so as you formed as a man, and as we continue to grow up, I feel like we have this rebirth after we, recognize we have an addiction problem. We need to address that whole thing going forward. I've noticed even the way you convey your messages before Congress or in interviews. One example would be I saw you on an interview with MSNBC, and the interviewer was clearly being antagonistic and kept beating over the same cycle, and you were keeping a calm, cool head and addressing it the best you could and said, no, I don't necessarily agree with this, but this is what I believe we can do. And you talked about the idea of where you were headed with your agenda, or what is it you believe to be true. And I think that's the core of it, is that getting a sense of one of the things I appreciate about you, when I've seen when you speak, you're not necessarily trying to hold the agenda per se. You're trying to do what you believe is true. And one of the things I think is evident about you is you care about the country, you care about people. And in that example, it was even the interview even gave you credit because you were one of the only ones that would get on the show. And then but I've seen you testify before Congress. And one of the ones that was recently moving to me and I think it speaks to you as a man, is your approach to the January 6th incident in D.C. because, it's easy to take one side or another on that issue. And I felt, even the first time I heard you speak about it, I didn't know you were there. The first time I heard you speak about it was when you were on your farewell tour. And you talked about being there, and you were such passion about it, because to me, it was about, this is wrong for the country and how both sides are handling our current state. But this is not the way to solve the problems. And the reason for that is because your backstory in your head about what you had just seen the day before. And I felt that you set aside politics that day, and it showed your character as a man when you stood there with somebody from the other party, and you both testified to your observations about what was going on there, and you both were leaning on, let's move forward, let's fix this problem, not who done it.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that tremendously, and I think it speaks to how you've developed too, I guess.
Well, and I think I appreciate that, and that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is I have a level of optimism that has been ingrained in me, either by birth or by my mom, or, here's a woman, she's got tons of kids, little kids, single mom. She could have given up, but she kept looking, and she kept smiling, and she kept seeing the sun coming up each morning. And so I think that's where a lot of it came from, and just also part of our DNA. But, January 6th, I would tell you, it was one of the worst days of my life. Because here is an institution. Here is something that I love, that I believe in, that represents so much, not just to 300 plus million Americans, but around the world. I've been around the world, and people have gone on vacation. People that listen to this, when you go on vacation outside the country, and you see kids that are 12, 10 years old talk about America with pride, like that's where I want to go, that's where I'm going to go, and then have an event like January 6th, and then see people of the country fight over if it even happened. I mean, I can't comprehend that. And I had some really strong leaders texting me on January 6th, this is all Antifa, this is all pre-organized, this is all some conspiracy theory. And I go, stop. Not today.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't. What you had there are people in America that are angry, that are upset, that are not in agreement as to where this country is going. And they felt that it was their duty, their obligation, or their misaligned mind that said, we need to go attack the Capitol to make sure that President Trump remains president of the United States. And that wasn't necessarily about Trump. That's what people don't really even understand about that day. And when I talk to people today about it, and I talk about Trump today, it's not about Trump. It's about the millions of people that he's tapped into that are a voice that we have to recognize. And you can live, I got people down in D.C., I got people in my world now who just are not even contemplating that certain people will think that way and are wired that way. And until you actually open yourself up to that point of view, you don't understand where they're coming from. And the ones that are misguided, those are the ones that we can still talk to.
Yeah.
The ones that are taken over by evil, they need to be held to face justice and be held to account. And we need to make sure that they're never in a position of power and doing what they're doing by alternative means. But
And I think
I digress on
no,
that.
no, it's fine. No, it's fine. That's why I brought it up,
Yeah.
is because I wanted people to see your passion on it. And here's why I brought that up. Even in a situation of that nature, the recovery principles matter. Because we've come as a nation, and the work that you've done all this time, I think that as a nation and in our homes and everywhere else, everything is based on how we feel. Like, if I feel a certain way, I must act, because we got to get feeling more and more and more, and all of a sudden my emotions take over, and my mind doesn't process this thing correctly. And what we're taught is to keep things centered. Recognize what's real, accept things you can't change. Acceptance is a big part of this whole thing, and this life is not as I'd have it be, but it doesn't mean you just stop working.
And it doesn't mean you walk out of the room.
Right.
Also, that's one of the things I tell people all the time. If you really want to solve January 6th for our country, you need to be in the room.
Stay and figure it out.
Stay in those rooms and listen to people.
Yep.
Don't judge, but at the end of the day, recognize that. Now, judge the ones that are who need to be held to account. Yeah. But there's a lot of people that are just misguided, and you need to understand where they're coming from, and then just try to lead them, inspire them. That this is not the way to handle our differences and our problems in America.
And those types of things, always, my bias is not about the event. It's about what got you there. What, and all parties involved, what caused that type of thing to happen, and whether it's that or another one. There was a lot of things that happened that got it there. How'd that happen? Yeah. And then individuals that act a certain way, like I did when I was drinking, I had to be held accountable.
Yeah, you had to be held accountable.
Regardless of whether I felt like I was justified in being in that way.
Yeah, but I'll never forget that day, and it's a deep scar that I still wrestle with, because it was a direct confrontation, and you were at the town hall where I had an individual who was a strong Republican leader who I adamantly disagreed, and I dressed down at that public meeting. I hope in a respectful way.
No, you're respectful, but he was definitely pushing it.
Yeah, and I was just I have the right. You have the right to express your opinion as to what happened.
Yeah.
I have the right to my opinion, and I am going to express it to you. And that's okay to do. And
I felt that actually was an indicator. I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up, because it was a sign to show me that just because you've gone on this recovery path doesn't mean you're just like all throwing flowers all over the place. You believe in what you believe, and you're going to stand behind it.
You still have to fight.
In that situation specifically, I saw a gentleman that just was, honestly speaking, in circles and getting more and more, increased in his rhetoric. And I felt that you just took a stand and said, look, this is where you are. This is where I'm at. This is what I believe to be true based on what I saw, because I was standing there in the blood, I think is what you indicated.
I was literally 10 feet away from that woman's blood.
Right. So, with that, I feel like...
And that's such a part of recovery that people often... Because I get this from my own wife at times. Like, oh, you're like all kumbaya now. You let it go and, just trust the process. No, yeah, you do have to do that. But at the same time, you have a responsibility to still get up. You still have a responsibility to do your part.
Yep.
Because we're given just a brief amount of time here on this earth to do what you're going to do with your life. And you don't just roll over and say, okay, everything's good. You say, it's good, I've healed, but I still got to get in the game. I still have to show up, and I still have to give my voice.
That's the part about recovery that we miss, that people miss, is that when I'm healthy and I'm working like I should be for my own recovery, I'm not fighting every battle. I'm rigorous about what I must control, because that is the only way I'm going to be okay. This process forward, based on what I'm called to be as a human being, I will be rigorous, and I'm probably more of a tenacious fighter for that space than I've ever been in any space in my life.
And what I find, you're more effective.
Yeah.
Because you're
not worried about everything.
Everything. You're not holding on by both knuckles, by your fingertips. You're more effective because it's a deeper commitment.
But knowing that, it's not that we hold the line in this place of wonderful recovery all the time. When I start seeing me get scope creep and controlling everything, and then I'm getting fearful and procrastination, the dance starts all over again. I know I'm in trouble.
The little voice starts talking.
I'm in trouble.
That's when you have to reach out to your friends.
Yes.
That's when you have to reach out. That's when those little God winks happen, where you trust the circle of people that you trust.
I started knowing the people closest to me in significant ways has been my indicator recently. But
it's not like a Band-Aid that's completely healed. It's still there. You just got to keep working at it.
Right. Well, there was plenty more I wanted to get into. We're running out of time here a little bit, but I think that we touched on a lot of the things. I mean, I would like to know, it's interesting to me as you went through this transition. In January of last year, you and I were talking, and it was really kind of a confusing time for you because you weren't really sure where things were going to head. And then here we are maybe a month and a half or so ago, we were talking, and you just sounded good. I told you that too on the
Yeah,
call. I go, man, you sound healthy and happy. And so, it's amazing.
Well, and I was going to share, because that's where a lot of people who hear my story for the first time, they recall the headlines, the front page of the Washington Post and the scandal and things like that. And what I guess they don't appreciate, and what I thank God that I was able to embrace my recovery years before that happened. That moment on the front page of the Washington Post came out of something that happened 4 or 5 years prior when I was still. And so I wasn't like I was going to recovery as a result of that. That. And I thank God that that's the way it went down, because when that happened, boy, I'll tell you, if I was still drinking, if I was still in a position where I hadn't confronted the demons and the wound that really was the root cause of where I was, I don't know if I could have survived that, because it was hard. I would not wish that moment, that follow-up period of time upon the devil himself.
Right.
Because that was you've had similar moments, an arrest or something.
I've got plenty of stuff that I'm not proud of, and I can't use alcohol as the excuse. I can use my behavior, but driven a lot by alcohol that I was unaddressed. It was unaddressed, and so when it was addressed, I realized that alcohol and me don't get along, and we caused me to be a complete maniac. I think that though. That is evidence. How this whole thing is played out is evidence of the fact that the longer that we hide this as leaders and as public officials or whatever else, the addictions or whatever else that you're dealing with that's destructive, or traumas in your life, whether it's childhood or otherwise, the longer you walk along like a robot and leave those unattended, you can fall. It's closer than you think it is. But at the same time, when things fall apart, there's hope, and there is work that can be done that can move on beyond, like you said, something you wouldn't wish on the devil himself.
When I went through that moment, I thought my life was over. But it was the principles of recovery. It was the strength I had gained and the circle of people that I had networked with that got me through that, to say, you know what, the sun's going to come up. And these are world leaders. Yeah. These are people. If I said their names, you would know them. They're on TV. They're in positions of.
Well, you already did. Homer Simpson.
Yeah, that's one of them. but I was able to see through the darkness because I wasn't medicating anymore. I wasn't not dealing with this stuff because I had dealt with it. And so when the shit hit the fan, like it did, it gave me the skill and the circle of support and the lessons taught to get through it, to realize. And when I was going through it, I told one guy, I don't even know if I can be a landscaper like I was in college. I don't know what's going to happen with my life.
Right.
I thought I was never going to be able to take care of my family ever again.
Right. And the thing is,
then the sun came up.
Yeah, and I don't think either one of us see ourselves as victims in those stages at all. It's a very confusing, overwhelming such season that we've caused ourselves, and to move beyond it, knowing that you were your biggest enemy. I'm speaking about Chris.
Yeah.
When I go through those seasons and I know that Chris was the reason, and Chris is his own biggest enemy, that's so debilitating if you don't have something around you to help you see beyond that.
And when that happened, I'm so glad you said that. I didn't view myself as a victim. I did it.
Yeah.
I took responsibility. What happened was I recognized that was a sin that I had to pay for. And that's why I didn't, people are telling me, and when that went down, deny it, blah, blah, blah. I go, no, it's who I am. It's part of my sobriety. I'm not going to risk my integrity and my sobriety by playing that game. Right. That's what got me in trouble to begin with. I acknowledged it, I accepted it, and all I can tell people is I apologized.
Yeah,
and you move forward.
For this show, I mean, really, it's a season of your life, and I think there's so many seasons of your life that are so impactful. Everything from child all the way through. Personally, my bias towards you is I'm impressed and I'm inspired based on what I've seen. I learned from you as a human being, and of course I respect what your role is. I think it's awesome. But honestly, one of the things that by getting to know you, the position isn't as intimidating to me. I think I minimize the role a little bit too much now because I realize that you are a human being that I respect tremendously.
And they all are.
Your legacy. We've made these decisions in life. We've fought through a lot of stuff. What do you want your legacy to be, or what do you see your legacy as?
Well, I hope that people recognize I tried the best I could. that I helped as many people as I possibly could. And then, as I go forward, that there's still more life to give. And so hopefully the legacy will be one to show that people, even if you think your life is over, like I did at that point in time, back when this went down, that no, there's more to give. And so I want, hopefully people see, who I am, who I was, warts and all. And if they can learn from it, if one person can get through it in a positive way, then it's all worth it. It's all worth it.
Yeah, and I think we all get to that point where we think life's over. I remember for me, my life over moment was in Thanksgiving of 2017. I was incarcerated for my last time, and I was looking. At that point, I was feeling good. I was in a sober season. I thought life was going to be, I got this. I can do this. I was in that pink cloud, and then they served me this dry piece of turkey, a little piece of mashed potatoes, and the peas. And I remember just crying. Because who knew a piece of turkey could make you so sad? I've stated in some writing I did. But it was the notion that I did this to my kids, that Dad's here. What a shameful man. At that moment, as a human being, I felt there's no way I'll heal or others around me can heal from me. And, you go from that place, and that's where the spiritual component is necessary. Something beyond me had to elevate me as a human being to be something that could give to others and have them never go there.
So well said, Chris. And you're sharing that with other people, and that's so powerful.
Right.
And you're sharing it with your family. And that's one of the things that hopefully my legacy is, not just to the people around me in public, but to my family and my kids. One of the things that really weighed on me was sitting down with them and explaining, what we're going to be dealing with.
Right.
I mean, this made world news, for Pete's sakes.
Sure did.
And it was embarrassing, and it was hard. And hopefully it gave a lesson to my child, to my son, my daughter, that sometimes you got to do things that are hard, that are perceived to be hard. They're the right thing to do, and you'll be better off for it. So if part of my legacy could be, look, you don't have to go down what most people do today when they get caught up in a scandal or something. Oh, deny, blame. Accept it. Because I find most people through this process have been so forgiving because they know the lesson. But for the grace of God, go I.
And on top of it, they all know the truth of the matter. So why not just own it and cause a demarcation between the old behavior and the new life?
You got it.
Draw the line.
And that makes you even stronger. You were strong before, but you're even stronger now.
And we miss the point. It's not dismissing the sin, so to speak. It's not dismissing that. We recognize the pain and want to heal others in the process. It's still a demarcation we've drawn to never be that again. And that's important. And
that's so important. And it gives you the ability then to even make a greater impact on people because you've moved, you've overcome it.
Yeah, the heat doesn't go away.
And the power of forgiveness. The power of forgiveness is at the root of life. I forgave my father. I forgave a whole bunch of other things. That was the root trauma, however.
Sure.
I hope, and the woman that brought these allegations forward, she accepted my apology. Forgiveness is a powerful tool in the world, and it's used less and less today.
And I honestly have a lot of respect for her for candidly doing that.
Correct.
Because, I mean, she didn't have to. And to me, that says a lot about who she is and what she's done in her life and the leadership she can provide for others as well.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's two sides of this coin here. Where
there's strength in her. There's strength in her, and there's strength in the situation.
Yep. And
in the sense of forgiveness is a powerful, cleansing, empowering force.
And candidly, these situations in the past that have been so hurtful, they can be your biggest blessings to help you become everything that you were built to be in the first place. You've lived beyond your father's years with those lessons and some of the baggage of heredity, and you've gone on to do things that are tremendous. Actually, your legacy has a lot of different things. I'm just curious. I said I was going to ask you this question, but I'm curious about who your Mount Rushmore is. In terms of leaders and who you respect.
Well, and I think when you gave me that pre-planted question, I thought about it quite a bit. But I look at people like Abraham Lincoln. Here's a guy who was born from nothing. became president of the United States when everybody laughed at him, faced, talk about division, slavery, civil war.
And he's one that had loss after loss after loss, and then magically, suddenly he's president of the United States.
People don't realize how unsuccessful he was.
Death, unsuccessful, loss of siblings, children.
Everything, businesses and bankruptcies and blah, blah, blah. But he kept on persevering.
Yeah.
And he kept on going forward.
Yep.
And he confronted his demons. And he rised above men and women tenfold because of that. Because he knew who he was, he accepted who he was, and he just never gave up.
Right.
He never give up.
I can see that in you. I mean, you use the house divided cannot stand. I've heard you make that comment 1,000 times. Your friend, the Democrat,
Josh,
he used it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if it's okay to use his name, but he
Josh is
he used the same thing too. And I think it's sort of like our mental health. Our mind divided can't stand either. It's just, the principle fits everywhere.
A great way to maybe close out here is that because when you're fighting these demons, you're divided. You got your inside voice, you got your outside voice, you got your facade, and you got your genuineness.
It's all you.
And it's not. You cannot sustain it.
No.
And if the sooner you recognize that and you unite the power of you and confront that demon, you become so much stronger and so much more ability to influence things in a positive way.
Right. Well, we definitely didn't have a problem filling the hour. We've gone over a little bit here. I appreciate being so generous with your time, but I did want to, I want to cap it out for me, what your legacy is in my life and my family. So the work I'm doing, you were the first person I met that actually did what I've been saying I believe leaders need to do with their addictions and with everything else. You're the first one I've actually seen the work being done. And so for me, you're a manifestation of this idea that it can be done. Because for me, I'll say, well, I really wasn't that big of a leader. I mean, you're a director of this and a director of that, but you're not really, a U.S. congressman. Well, you did the work that I believe people can do, and I appreciate that. For me also, you showed me authenticity when I don't think people realize how important it is, like how much moments are important. So there was crossroads that you have no clue, and I'll never get into it with you, but at lunches or phone calls or whatever else, it just seems like when we choose to go along and be with our fellows in this journey and recognize that we all have our weaknesses and none of us are doing this perfect, we help each other and bolster each other just because of the spiritual connection that happens when you give it all up. You just drop it there at the door. And I know from my own story, you have been a reason why I was able to get back a career that was gone. And it wasn't because of anything you did to influence it. It was because of the focus I was able to retain because I knew that it was possible. And so I'm back in the industry that was supposedly lost, that I was in for 20 years, and I am in another director role and doing well. And it had a lot to do with conversations that you and I had, because it is possible. And part of it is that when we strip away all this other nonsense, we actually become stronger than we were when all those awards and those things were there. We are better, and for me, happier.
Well, I'm getting a little emotional thinking and hearing that, and I'm humbled that maybe I had a little bit of a positive impact on that.
You do, and it's not because you were Congressman Reed. I was intimidated by you when I first met you just because of my own view of myself and my view of the position. But I found out very quickly is that you were a man that went through a broken season in life, had some history that you struggled with, and I could relate to, and I could learn from.
And come through it.
Yeah,
and come through it. My chapter now, fast forward a year and a half, post-Congress, resigning from Congress. It was tough. It was all the headwinds that went through it. But I'm in a better position now. I think I can actually help more people in the roles that I'm doing now in regards to where I'm at. And
well, you're not running for public office for once. You don't have to worry about what you say.
Exactly. Well, yes, but it's also it's still satisfying that itch, and shows that you can. Even when you think everything is that, folks who are out there, I'm sure right now, I can never do that because then my secret would be out and people will never give me another chance. No, don't think that way.
Right.
Because the chance of embracing that will lead to more. That will lead to stronger outcomes at the end of the day and more opportunities. I never really believed that when I was going through it.
Yeah, you don't. Until
you actually then start receiving.
And when somebody tells you that you think they're full of crap, but
correct.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
Yep.
But it's true. And then you start relying upon yourself, and because now you're a better person, you've confronted those weaknesses. You're stronger, and you're actually in a position to do more than you ever did before, even though what you did before was outstanding.
Right.
And so I encourage people, like you, one of the missions of this show, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Let it go. Jump.
100%.
Closer than it appears.
Yeah, closer.
And what closer than it appears is, you're that close to failing and it all blowing up.
Yeah.
And then also it's closer than it appears when you jump. Success will be there. I guarantee it.
Yeah. And it's manifested in your life for sure. And if people take a look at it, and hopefully this show helps people understand the true Tom Reed. The only thing is, if you were running for public office, they'd say that you found Homer Simpson to be your higher power. I can see that as being a headline somewhere.
Oh, that's whoever it is, wherever it comes from, I'll take it.
Yeah. And I appreciate you coming on the show. Guys, check us out on Instagram. We have a Facebook page as well. You can reach out to us at ignite@2017performance.com and connect with us through there. We're going to be doing some groups going forward with some Zoom sessions where you can discuss what's happening on the show and get yourself involved in the work that we're doing here and expand it beyond just a show. So,
and Chris, thank you for doing what you're doing with this show.
No problem. Thank you.
You're touching people in a way that's going to make sure that they get through this darkness and thrive, and that's going to be your legacy.
Thank you.
Your legacy is you're helping a lot of people. Not only are you succeeding individually on your own, but you're helping thousands of other people by showing them that there is light here.
That means a lot to me coming from you. I know you mean it, and you just did it again. That would have showed up in a text message at another time, but I appreciate you doing it face to face.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.